Good Monday morning and welcome to Peace Out, where we are all learning together to peace out, right? And I don't know about you, but I've had lots of opportunities lately. God just keeps giving these opportunities to figure out how to just peace out, right? Just trust Him for what is right in the moment. That's what we're going to kind of talk about today, a little bit too. So I had two things on my brain this morning, two different things. And I was like, how do these two come together, right? So I was thinking, and then I thought maybe God was just trying to show me something out of the Word that I needed to apply, which is usually always the case too. And then all of a sudden it kind of started coming together. I was like, this is so cool. So buckle in, let's go, okay? In Matthew 14, Jesus fed the 5,000. Now, He also walked in the water. He also did all kinds of cool stuff. John the Baptist had just died, right? There's a whole lot going on in Matthew 14. But Jesus fed the 5,000. Now, here's the thing. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, but He asked the disciples, the disciples said, what are we going to do? All these people need some food. And they said, should we send them away? But, we need to send them away. And Jesus said, you feed them. They said, impossible. Inconceivable. No, sorry. Impossible. He said, we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. They had already checked out their circumstances. They had already looked around to see what they had available, and then they decided it wasn't possible. And Jesus said, bring them here, right? So Jesus used the bread and fish to feed somebody brought, the young lad or whichever story this was, right? God used what they had in that moment to feed 5,000, over 5,000 people, right? And it was a miracle. It was like, wow, it's one of those stories we run to, we like to share, right? Well, I thought that was on my mind when I first woke up. And then I thought of something else, and I was kind of going along the lines of God uses what we have. And so I thought, what do they have? Jesus asked them, what do you have? And He said, you feed them. And that had to have sounded crazy to them because they had already looked at their circumstances and said, we have 5,000 people, 5,000 hungry people, and we only have a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish. We don't have enough, is the translation there that they didn't say. They just said, we can't. He said, you feed them. They said, we can't because we don't have enough. Can I say that we'll never have enough, but God can make whatever we have enough. You might want to clip that little piece right there, right? We will never have enough, but God will always make what we have enough. So I was thinking along those lines, and I thought, God asked Moses a similar question. He said, what do you have in your hand? Now, He didn't ask the disciples, what do you have, right? But they came to that conclusion, and He made them assess that themselves, some reflection, think about what circumstances they were in for a little bit. But Moses is on the backside of the wilderness, and the bush is on fire, and he draws aside to look at it, and God starts talking to him, and Moses is like, I don't know if I can do this or not. And God says, what do you have in your hand? And he goes, a rod. He goes, well, throw it down. He throws it down. It comes a snake. Moses gets scared. I'd have got scared too. He ran. I'd have run too, depending on what kind of snake it was, right? And then God tells him to pick it back up. And he says, your rod is my rod. Okay, now here's where I want to bring this all together. And secondly, let me throw this in here first. God told Moses, because Moses said, who do I say sent me? And God said, tell him, I am the one who always is. Or I am is the King James, some of the other translations. But the New Living says, I am the one who always is. He always is, present tense. We can talk about all He's always done, all the things He's done, all the things He's brought us through. That's how we encourage ourselves sometimes, is by looking back and going, oh, I know God brought me through that. Man, I was hanging on by a thread, and the thread broke, but God brought me through that. We can look at what God has done. We can look at scriptures and look at prophecies and go, I'm going to see the New Jerusalem come down out of heaven, and we're going to live with God forever and in peace and work in the kingdom forever. And we can look at what's coming, and that's awesome. But I don't know about you. I know I need a God who is in my today. I need a God who understands my circumstances, and that's what these two stories bring together for me. See, for the disciples, Jesus said, what do you have? Or He said, feed them. And they said, well, we only have a little bit of bread and a couple of fish. For Moses, He says, what do you have? And he goes, well, I got a rod. And He says, well, throw it on the ground. God didn't tell Moses, well, I see you got a rod there, but if you had some loaves and fishes, man, we'd really have something to work with there. And he didn't tell the disciples, oh, you got a few loaves and fishes. Oh, man, well, that's going to come up short. If you only had a rod, a staff, a shepherd's staff, that's something I could work with. Now, God didn't tell them. Jesus, neither story reached outside of their present to try to find an answer. God was in their present and provided an answer and an escape and what was needed in that moment with what they had. And here's what I'm trying. This is exciting to me as I've been processing this the last couple hours, going over and over and over my brain. God is in our present. He's with us. We're not always looking back at what he's done, although that's great and it encourages us. We're not always looking for, I need him right now. Whatever I'm facing right now, whatever I'm going through today. And God is a now God. He is the one who always is. He's always in the now. Because he encompasses time, he can choose to be in time. He created time, right? He created the beginning. The beginning wasn't the beginning of God. God created the beginning. God said, let there be, and there was. And so since he created this span of time, which is finite, and even though he's infinite or infinite, depending on where you live in the country, right? He steps into our right now. He doesn't just sit on his throne and go, whoo, this is going to be interesting. He said to the disciples, you feed them. They needed food. They didn't need deliverance. He tells Moses, go get them. I'm in your now. Go get them. They needed deliverance. They didn't need food. They had food. In fact, later when they're walking through the wilderness, that's one of their complaints. At least we had garlics and leeks when we were in Egypt. They couldn't even see what God was doing in their midst because of their pain and their attitudes, right? And so today I'm going to encourage myself, and I want to encourage you this too. God's in here today. No matter what it looks like, whether you need food or whether you need a rod, he's got what we need, you need, to make it today. Which takes me to a scripture in Peter that we talk about a lot. And it just came to mind, so I want to read it real quick. And I never can remember if it's 1 Peter or 2 Peter, but I think it's 2 Peter. It is 2 Peter. In 2 Peter it says this, that God, his divine power, and 2 Peter 1, I think that's a 3, as we know, let's see, his divine power gives us everything we need for life and godliness. He gives us everything we need in this spiritual. And he goes into the supernatural when we need it. The rod turning into a snake was supernatural. And God, when Moses went on to Egypt, it said he took the rod of God. What Moses had in his hand, that staff, that rod, became God's rod. God's extension into time to be used, right? Those loaves and fishes were what was in their hand, and God used that. God will use whatever circumstances you are in to provide supernaturally for you and your loved ones or whatever you need. We just have to trust him because he's the God of today. He's in this day with us right now, using whatever we have available and make available to him to get us into tomorrow. And then when we get to tomorrow, it'll be another today that he'll be in. He's always on. He's always on time. He's always with, and he's not got anywhere to go, right? He doesn't have the capacity to leave us. I love that, right? And that's why we can peace out. Peace out. I hope I said something that made sense. I'm really excited about all this. In case you couldn't tell, I'll see you again tomorrow.